On this episode of EdTech, we'll talk about supply chain issues and innovation. All that and more on this episode.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EdTech, episode 100, the new semester. Hello, AV friends. This is the EdTech podcast, and I'm going to go around and reintroduce you to the gang. We've got with us Ernie Bailey.
Good afternoon.
And we've got Rob Rasberry.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Erin, thanks. Thanks for joining us. This is a new era. I'm excited about it. So, welcome.
Thank you. And we've got Scott Tiner.
Hey, Erin. It's always nice to be back, and it's nice to have you here.
Excellent. Yeah, it's kind of like we got the band back together, but with a new lead singer. So I am Erin Maher-Moran, and a little bit about me. I'm from Johns Hopkins University. I am the IT manager for classroom technology, and I do control system programming on top of all of my managerial duties. And I've been at this higher ed AV game for quite a while, and it's pretty much all I know at this point. Straight out of college, and so it seems like I am kind of a nice fit here to start running the show. So we've got some interesting topics that we can choose from today, but I think today I want to start off with an article that was written by our very own Scott Tiner that can be found at Rave Pubs. It's the Will Supply Chain and Inventory Problems Change AV? Now, we have all been kind of, it's just been drummed into us about the issues that the industry has been facing with supply chain. But this article I liked because it kind of, took a little bit different of a look at it. And so how about we start off with you, Scott, since you wrote it?
Yeah, thanks. I think, like you said, who hasn't talked about supply chain and inventory over the past 2 years? It's constant in our minds. What I started thinking about recently, though, is what are the longer term effects of these problems that we have? So in a number of ways. Number one, our manufacturers have got to be thinking about how do I produce products that are less reliant on components from other countries? So does that mean soft products, hardware as a service? What does that mean about, one of my real big concerns, what does that mean about 2 years from now? I order product A year ago, I still don't have it. I might not want product A in another year. I might want product B, and I hope the companies are developing product B. And then finally, the other one that really concerns me is about some of the smaller integrators and how are they possibly surviving these jobs that their jobs are like the manufacturers, right? They're missing one component. They can't build the system. How are they keeping the flow going? And as a matter of fact, one of the comments on that article was from an integrator who even said, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to make it because of this.
The supply chains affected all of us. What's interesting is that I just saw something about like Micron creating a plant in, I don't know whether it's somewhere in the Northeast U.S. So they're going to start, creating chips, or they've got the big incentive to create things domestically. So I don't know how that in the long term is going to affect things, but Scott's absolutely right. The smaller integrators are going to have a challenge, with the supply and demand, and obviously the manufacturers and the larger integrators are going to have the priority to receive, the devices that are on back order. I was just up, believe it or not, yesterday at the Crestron Experience up in New Jersey, and so got a chance to look at one of their local warehouses to see where they're manufacturing stuff. And even though they have a big, backlog, it's good that they seem to understand that something needs to be done where they can produce things more locally to meet the demands of some of their customers. So we'll see whether they're going to be able to do it, but it was very encouraging. And I think there is an awakening. We need to have a better chain to produce the parts that are needed for our industry to keep this going. And then, there was a point this year where I was saying, well, normally I go with these kind of components. Now I had to start thinking about, well, do I go with something that's lesser known, lesser tested, because we want to get that project done somewhere near on time? Or am I going to wait and try to recycle my old stuff and get it in and have, a bigger failure point until I can, make it through to when we get, the equipment that we need? It's an interesting situation. And, some people say, well, in 2 or 3 years, we'll be caught up. I don't know if that's the case. I really don't know.
Right. Yeah. Because as they're researching and developing new things, then they're going to have to completely switch tracks and start manufacturing those new things. But then what do they do with the old stuff? And I think kind of Crestron has somewhat started that almost in the announcement of paring down the DMPS line to only a couple of their more flagship models. But it also makes me wonder, is this really going to be opening the door for some of those smaller companies to really break in and make an impact? Or is it going to be like they're just the stopgap until the bigger companies catch back up? And once that's readily available, they'll be like, oh, we're back at the old stuff. And all these smaller companies that had their moment are going to fall by the wayside again. What do you think, Ernie?
I definitely agree with you. We're looking at different options, for products that we're unable to get, from Crestron or whoever. See if anyone has anything that's close to compatible. I've got a couple of very young, eager programmers and designers who are wanting to learn and see what they can do and what they can make of these things. Another issue we're having with, these long lead time items is on my budget side. If something's taking over a year to get here or it crosses a fiscal year for me, I'm actually paying for it twice because it comes out of my budget the first year because when they encumber the money. Well, the money's not spent that year. It doesn't go back into my budget at the end of the year. It goes back to general funds. But then when it arrives the next year, it's taken out of that year's budget along with the stuff that I've purchased again. So it's cost me twice, whether, the integrator or the box house that provided didn't get paid twice, but I lost funds I could have used for something else rather quickly. And when you're looking at, numerous systems, that can be significant after a while.
Absolutely. I feel like that's kind of something that people don't potentially think about if they're not in higher ed, that our budgets are annual and very few of us are fortunate enough to have sort of a rolling budget where they'll leave that line open, from year to year for these sorts of things. And that might be also a thing that we could potentially bring up to the, the finance powers that be to see if there could be an adjustment to our budget lines for specifically these reasons, because we order things that, it is beyond our control to be able to, get that in and taken out, in that fiscal year. It looked like you had some thoughts there, Scott.
I actually, it's interesting to me what Ernie said. I had not heard that before, but it makes sense, especially at a public institution with the way they have to manage their finances and be accountable to the public. That you can't just roll that over into the next year. Private institution, we're a little bit more flexible where we can do that. And quite honestly, our POs are we can give a PO as a promise to buy, but the funds aren't encumbered in the same way they are in some of the larger institutions and some of the larger public institutions. But the other one I'm always wonder about is this piece about substitutes, and what you were asking, Erin, is will you commit to that and keep going forward? Did we learn something about kind of committing to one product, one ecosystem? My pessimistic side says no. My pessimistic side says after 2 years, we're going to be like, I really liked that other system, and we know that those big manufacturers are going to push us right back and try to get us right back in, and they're good at doing that.
We've seen some innovation, in ours, in that, we were kind of forced to move to virtual processors for our classrooms. We had been kind of dragging our feet, not wanting to do it. Well, when we had rooms half built and no processors for them and none in the foreseeable future, we switched over to a virtual processor and are finding out that it's a much smoother transition than what we were afraid of at first, I believe. But it's one of those things where innovation comes in, because you've got to figure out something to keep your classes going. We have to worry about accreditation hearings and stuff like that. Make sure that our rooms are functional and the students are getting the education they need, or we're not going to have a school, and therefore we won't have a job.
That's a really good point. And I was just going to sort of add on to that. So you either go two ways. You either go with that innovation or you scale back. So in a classroom where you might have a control system and microphones and everything else, you may just have to scale back to a large display and just, a simple cable. And you just have to tell the instructors, listen, this is what we're dealing with. This is what you can do. The students will see the content. And as long as you project a little bit or whatever, you're going to be okay. So there's like two ways it can really go. And then like on the economic side, which to think about is, when a manufacturer gets an order for 1,000 units versus 10 units, what do you think they're going to go for? And so that sort of hurts the little guy even more. So it's interesting. But yeah, innovation is definitely something that's definitely we've been looking more into because of this situation.
Well, and this segues very nicely into another article that we had taken a look at, and that was also written by Scott. Where is the innovation in AV? Also on rave pubs. So in the article, Scott posed that, have we sort of taken a pause a bit on the innovation, but kind of what we're, even in the little bit that we've been talking, it kind of sounds like maybe there has been some, but not really where we would have normally saw it. What do you think, Scott?
Well, that article was written partially to cause discussion and maybe to cause some disagreement, right? And I've had some back and forth with people on it, and I really focus on that article about innovation that affects the end user, that affects the customer. And so, yes, I think virtualized processors or soft processors is innovative, maybe, but our end users don't know any different when they're using that. And as I was thinking about today, and I was thinking about this article, I was thinking about Ernie, and I think about the stuff they do at a medical school and the simulations that they do and the experiences that they must have. And I was thinking, I wonder if Ernie's going to tell me, boy, you have to come to this medical school in the last 5 years and see how doctors are learning now. And then then you'll know that you were wrong. So I'd love to be told that, because I love innovation and it's exciting.
Well, Scott, I will tell you, we are seeing some innovative ways in teaching. And part of that has to do with us opening up a second medical campus. So we actually have two campuses running with the same faculty. Students can be on either campus. There's one set of faculty, one support team from my group. But there are some neat things that are going on in the way that we're teaching. And a lot of it is background things like what we were talking about, but there are things that the doctors are seeing new, some virtual tools they're seeing, some new ways to see the body and things like that. Sometimes without knives and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and I'd love for you to come see what we're doing.
Well, sounds like we need to make a plan. I haven't done much traveling the past 2 years, so
Field trip.
exactly.
So I have there's two word phrases that I like to use: innovation versus implementation. So you can have something that's innovative, but is it applicable? Can you implement it on your campus? Is it not going to say user friendly, but ultimately will it work? So you have to sort of look at those two things. And I think, Scott, you're right. It's sort of hard to there's a lot of things that you do that are like not a creative, but an alternative mode of doing things, but is it really innovative? So like, as an example, something that is not really innovative, but it's different for us is we had big Zoom enterprise. And so we are storing gobs and gobs of Zoom recordings, just ungodly amounts. And, as a higher education institution, you do want to watch the bottom line. And the storage was just unbelievable. So when the pandemic started, it's fine. You have to do it. And then you have to think about where can I, cut corners, save, but still do implementations. And we had a Kaltura integration. And so I talked to some higher ed institutions, and they have a way of connecting the two. But because of the way we do our SSO, it became very difficult. So we had to come up with a custom script to connect it so that a Zoom recording would pass through to Kaltura. Is that innovative? I don't know. Did it for us? Yes. Yeah, it is. And it's worked very well since we have unlimited bandwidth on that side. But these are things you look about. We have to now take a look at, the big AV over IP, push and things of this sort. And so it's quite interesting. And Ernie, again, we all should take a trip down to you, because medical schools have an amazing way of doing things. So maybe we should do an EdTech from Ernie's spot. That would be, how about that?
I would love that.
I think that Erin needs to talk to the powers that be here and do a remote
Absolutely.
remote EdTech sometime.
That would be fun. Like, on location. There has to be a balance. Like, there can be all these innovative things, but if we put them in a classroom and it's not really useful, then what was the point?
And I think there's some innovation. I mean, I talked a little bit about holograms. I'm still a big believer in the potential of holograms, and I think that people overlook it because they're like, oh, well, you know how much those cost, and do you know all the equipment you need? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And that's today. I'm talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about in the future. And at CEDIA, there was this screen you might have seen that like folds when you press a remote, and it kind of goes from a curved screen. I'm like, okay, cool. Not really sure what the use of that is. Like, I have a curved screen. I leave it curved all the time, and that's cool. But then you think about it in a classroom. Could that fold and go into a desk? And when you want, could it just come up in front of a student and unfold? Okay, now that really starts to get kind of innovated. It changes their experience. It changes what we do. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things that are on the cusp, but just aren't there.
Yeah, and then I think it comes down to a support model. Is things that we come up with can be super innovative and neat, but if we don't really have the ability to support it behind the scenes, how successful could it possibly be also? Because I know that, resources you would think Johns Hopkins, like, we must have, we're printing our own money here. But resources are very slim and difficult to get and hold on to. And I've recently been trying to get a new FTE just to make up for the fact that we're doing so much more streaming and all of these extra things that we, 3 years ago, we weren't really offering or had to worry about on such a scale, because it was onesie twosies and we could take care of that. But then to actually have to support it on the regular, on a grand scale in multiple rooms, as opposed to just a couple here and there, that becomes a challenge. So to keep the ability to support up with all of these new innovations and fun things we want to do is, half the battle. Is there kind of a dream product that you could, that you might have maybe seen a glimpse of besides sort of the hologram thing? Is there anything that's out there that you've seen recently or heard inklings of that you would be like, now that would be cool to have?
I could tell you lots of things I've dreamt of that I've never heard of.
Well, that's perfect.
I think when I talked about the curved screen floating in a desk, I mean, we all have dealt with forever this issue of everybody looking at the front of the room and the chalkboards are blocked and they can't write on them. And so for me, this piece of some type of truly immersive, truly active learning that isn't 6 monitors on walls and the faculty member put the same thing on all 6 monitors. It does never happen. Some way to really put that in front of a student and have some true interaction is something that I'd love to see. And of course, as you said, Erin, it has to work, number one. And number two, there has to be resources to support it, because unfortunately in the home world, everything we get or do, we think, oh, it's easier and easier and to do. But we know in our end, everything we just talked about is actually more difficult to actually implement, and we need more people to do it, not fewer people to do it.
Like, what do you mean? I can't just run out to Best Buy and do this and put it in my classroom and it'll work? Like, not quite. That's not how it works.
I'm not. Yeah, see, again, it's that innovation. Is it truly innovative, or is it something that we've been working on for a while? And I think I always keep coming back to what we've been working on for a while. So I've seen a lot of, I guess, progress with video switching, and we all know motion tracking and video switching still wasn't quite where it should be. And it seems like there's been these acquisitions. You notice these acquisitions, right? So Poly gets bought by somebody, One Beyond gets bought by somebody, and so these larger companies are understanding that video is such an integral part of what they do, even though audio really is almost more important. But they understand the need that when you're in a classroom, you need to be able to comfortably switch between your instructor or maybe a student in the audience, or in a meeting room, be able to switch to whoever's talking and have it decently framed up so you're not moving around like a roller coaster. And they seem to be getting closer and closer. So I would love to see a system that, you just walk in, turn the system on, and it'll just recognize whatever you're doing and do it in a way that's not going to, make your eyes cross into the back of your skull. So that's, for me, what would be great.
We're working on things like that on our campus. Through programming, just where a mic touch will automatically switch a camera and all that. We're getting down to where we're trying to do it now with wireless devices and trying to figure out exactly where the microphone is. That's a little bit trickier. But I think part of the innovation that we've really seen in the last couple of years is that we used to have either a virtual classroom where nobody was in the room, or we had everybody in a room. Now we've gone to the hybrid situation, and I don't see that going away. So I think we're seeing a lot of innovation there in that the way that we're developing it and the way that it affects the students and the faculty that we're working with. So they can all feel connected physically as well as virtually.
Absolutely. I wish that there was a way that, like, and maybe there is, and maybe someone will come up with it at some point, to make the experience of the hybrid experience of having far side and near side students at the same time equitable, so that it's more of the same experience in person as it is remote, but also make that easy on the instructors, because I feel like that's so difficult for them to have to be able to cater to both, because it is sort of a different style of teaching, to give both sides, a fair shot at it. But that, I don't think we've gotten to that point yet, at least technology wise, to make it that much of an equitable experience.
The one good thing that's come out of this is that it has given me more of a drive to find other technologies than what, it used to be, oh, we'll go to Infocom, we'll do this and do that. But now you're really tuned in to finding that next big thing or that innovative technology. So that was my final thought.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today with me. And Ernie, how can everybody reach you?
Everybody can reach me through LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. And Rob, how about yourself?
I'm on LinkedIn, so that's the best way to reach me. Rob Rasberry on LinkedIn.
Okay. And Scott, final thoughts, and how can people get in touch with you?
Couple final thoughts, Erin. Congrats on a fabulous first EdTech. Looking for many more to come. Second thought is we're definitely going to get Ernie and Rob onto Twitter here before we're done too long. I know at least I think I've heard Ernie's on Twitter. It just doesn't just kind of listens more
Not
than
very often.
Okay. And you can certainly find me on Twitter at Tiner or on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you guys so much for making my first episode easy breezy and fantastic. You can reach me on Twitter at smearin_off_ice. If you didn't know, that was my roller derby name. A whole other story that maybe we'll get to in a future episode. So stay tuned and have a good one. Bye.